Hello everybody, this is Sean with Easy Street Billiards. Just getting set up here for this stream. Find them here. Share. Alright, let's do it. So the first thing I want to talk about today, maybe the last thing, I don't know, depends on how long it goes, is the team dynamic. As far as like, if you're playing in a team event, like a mini Mosconi, etc., or a larger event, or you're playing maybe in a doubles match, team match of any sort, I just wanted to maybe go over my opinions and discuss like my thoughts on team events. I've had some decent success myself. I have a Western BCA 9-ball 3-person teams plaque back when it was open and it was not different divisions, it was just one division. And since then I've played another like tap league tournament that was a team event and won. Recently I got invited to the Northwest Cup as a team player. Recently, or in the past, I think 2018 I was invited, but I had to cancel last moment. Now that I'm back on the team, I think it's worth discussing for myself, just so I can get it kind of like managed in my mind and formed in my mind how I want to approach the situation. So I guess I'll just start out with discussing different things that come up in teams. If you're playing, say we're playing 3-person teams or 5-person teams, you're typically going to have, you know, different skill levels in the team. Most of the time, there's definitely going to be 1 or 2 like better players, and there will be, you know, the middle, and then there will be like 1 or 2 players near the bottom of the Fargo or skill level. And kind of the way the format goes is it's going to be relatively random. The expectation is you're going to be playing against all the other players, and they're going to play you, and then if you're playing Scotch doubles, then you know you may be the weak player or the strong player on a team, and how you're going to deal with the different dynamic and the flow and the different personalities is very important. Kind of the way that I've historically been is either kind of towards the middle of the strength of the team or near the top of the strength of the team. So my role is always seems like it's been as one of the better players to motivate and keep the other players that maybe are mentally have not as much experience, or they're feeling the pressure and they haven't experienced the pressure of teams and they want to do better. So then my focus then is going to be a lot of times on keeping my own emotions in check so that I can then lend my my strength and my motivation, and my internal discipline to other players on my team to lend them some strength so that they can perform at their best. And then that's sort of the practice of it, where you want to do well for yourself, but at the same time the team needs to do well. You need to figure out a way to motivate the team as well without pulling yourself away from your own ability to do well. If you are a quiet person and you don't do well in crowds, then maybe it's more appropriate for you to just be quiet and try to be peaceful, and try not to add any negativity to the group through, maybe if you're struggling, or just stay out of the way as much as you can and do your own thing so that you can then conserve your own energy and not be using your own energy unnecessarily or wasting it, so that you can then conserve it for the match. So the team dynamic also, it's not just when you're playing. You got to realize also, it's like after every match, in between breaks, you're going to be sitting, you're going to be conversating, you're going to be in a social situation, and how you deal with that is important, because you want to set yourself and your teammates up to do the best that they can. So all of your activities, in this competition, and ideally leading up to it, you're focusing on, the lack of control that you're going to have, really, where if you're in a 5-person team, the expectation is you're going to play, 20% of the games, or thereabouts, based on, order. You'll play more or less than that. A fifth of the team, you play a fifth of the games. That's the expectation. Now with the Scotch doubles format, maybe a little bit more, but definitely far less than you'd be playing in Scotch. So you gotta, or not in Scotch, but in singles. So you have to understand your opportunities are going to be limited, and you're probably not going to have as much practice time as you want, because everyone's going to be sharing the table. So in effect, it seems to me as though with the team event, you're kind of going in cold a little bit, and then you're still expected to perform at a high level. And it seems to me as though most people have a little bit of trouble in that. Some people do really well, some people don't, and we're going to try to help figure out how you can play your best based on who you are and what your goals are. My goal for this team event that I'm coming up playing in is to just maximize, my help of the other team, or my teammates, the other players on my team, without trying to reduce their ability to play well. I'm not going to be trying to get in the way of other people or to dictate, my energy onto other people. I'm going to just try to conserve my own energy, and then try to help people also stay in line with their best selves, so that they can play as well as possible. Help them, when they make mistakes, let go of the mistakes and help them move forward through just constantly being aware, that I'm not the only one on this team, and if I want us to win, I need to help. That's the way I'm gonna go for it. My expectation is that I'm gonna be using some of my energy to try to help the other team, or help the other teammates play better, and I'm not going to worry so much about myself. I practice as much as I can, and I compete as much as I can, and that preparation is going to continue up until the day of the event. I'm going to work on the things that I work on. I'm one of the fortunate, people that have a pretty balanced game. I'm not particularly concerned with what kind of shots might come up. I'm pretty knowledgeable. I know that I'm not, the best at everything, but I'm also solid enough to where I can get by with what I've got in most situations. My moving is good. My shot making and run out game is pretty solid. I'm in the middle of the Fargo area, so I don't feel like, based on the team that we're playing against, that I'm overmatched. So I'm going into it, pretty confident that I'm going to be able to execute my strategy as best I can, and that it's pretty clear what I need to do. The unknowns that I'm going to be facing is like, well, how are the other team going to play? What are the reactions of my teammates going to be? Maybe the order, and then trying to gel with Scotch doubles with my partners, because that hasn't been picked, and all that stuff. and my goal is just to stay as flexible and as adaptable as possible in the middle of all that. Let's see, we got nobody on right now, so if somebody comes on and wants to talk, obviously, I'd love to have a comment, so we can talk about more stuff. Other than that, team dynamic, going into it, I'm going to be visualizing myself in a lot of different scenarios where the things that you'll introduce yourself to when you're playing in a team event in a pool hall or a bar, where there's going to be a massive amount of people around every table that has a match going compared to a singles event. So there's going to be less room, it's going to be more crowded, it's typically going to be a little bit warmer in the room earlier, there's going to be a lot more people, and later on it should moderate. So you expect it to be crowded, expect when you're shooting here, the table next to you, there's going to be people playing there. Everyone's going to be taking it seriously, so you're going to have to watch out for all the different obstructions, all that, with people waiting for them to shoot so you can shoot, because you're going to be respectful. Hopefully they're going to be respectful, and if they're not, that's really not anything that you can do anything about. The goal is just going to be to let that go and do your best to just stay in the moment and do what you can do based on the scenario. And I guess basically kind of the way I look at it is that when I'm playing in a team event, I'm going to try to keep my own personal pool hygiene as high and as clean and tight as possible. I don't want any of my actions to make my teammates feel as though there may be something wrong, and then it gives them an expectation that maybe I'm going to perform inferior to what maybe my capabilities are based on my attitude. So no matter what, my main focus is just going to be on my attitude. Taking things like water off the duck's back as much as I can. The other team's expectation is they're going to be maybe heightened. It seems like teams brings out way more energy than singles matches in general, especially early on. Everyone's going to be kind of trying to feel their way, and then the first team to really just get out of their own ways and just start playing the game the way they want to play it. Like when I play, I'm going to play the game as best I can, knowing that I'm going to have very few opportunities. So I'm going to play every game as though it's important. I'm going to say hill beginning of the match. Each shot you shoot is sort of relatively the same amount of importance, because you're developing lifetime habits over time. You can't just say, oh, this shot isn't important because it's not, the finals of the tournament. It builds your skill so that finals of the tournament shot that you shoot can be made more easily. So with that being said, I think that you want to have a very clear idea of what your process is going into the match, and all the different things that you're going to try to work on, and so that you can then have something to hold on to while the stress and the extra energy that's going to be there is being displayed by all the other people and yourself, so that you have something to focus on that can keep you playing your best pool, ideally, so that you can be successful. And I think visualizing, just having a good time, relaxing, taking every shot like a challenge that you're prepared to accept, that when inevitably weird things happen, one player typically seems like they feel the brunt of all the bad luck that happens, all the randomness, where they'll be taking a lot of bad rolls, which happens in pool, and then another teammate may be getting so many good rolls and just everything seems easy, and that could happen too, and it's just you just got to roll with it. If you're the guy that's getting all the tough rolls, where they're missing and leaving you tough, and then now you're just constantly being jumping, kicking, and then you look over at your teammate, and then every time they come to the table, they have an easy out, maybe they're not getting out, and then or maybe they're just getting lucky and they're winning, and then you're over here having a lot of trouble really executing your own strategy, because just of the randomness of the game is preventing that from being so easy. and now you're gonna have to deal with that scenario. So I try to like look at all these like random scenarios that might come up, and just realize it's all good. No matter what you do, you signed up, you're gonna play the tournament, you're gonna play in this team event. Everyone that is there is in the same boat, and it's more about like the experience that you can draw from, and then the future ideas about like, okay, what potentially could I get involved with, what could happen, and how am I going to respond energetically. I think is a good point. You can't really say, oh, if this exact scenario happens, this is the exact response that I'm going to have. It's more like, in my mind, if someone starts to fall off, get triggered or whatever, and they start to exhibit some negative behaviors that are going to like pull them away from being able to play their best game, if it's your opponent that's doing that, you kind of just like, well, I'm just going to stay out of the way of that. Not my responsibility to try to get my opponents to play better. I'm more about trying not to get any on me, so to speak, with their energy, like me reciprocating or vibing with their negativity if they're expressing it. My goal is just going to be like, oh yeah, well, they started getting a little bit frustrated because they weren't playing well, and it just is what it is. We just keep playing as though it's all good, because it is all good, or if everything's are going well, you just ride it, you just have fun. Sometimes everyone's clicking at once and you're just like enjoying yourself, and then the key is just to ride that wave and just enjoy it, and stay out of the way of the bad things that are going to come. Navigate your way through the tournament in such a way that you can keep riding that positive wave, and then if you see a negative wave coming or some negative scenarios that might come to fruition if you don't do something, then your goal is to identify as early as you can, and then, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Like, well, the best thing to do is just, chill out for a second, and then, you'll have time to think about what needs to happen, time to get your energy right. If there's a shot clock, then maybe you won't have as much. Now it's just going to be about like when you're the constant motion, you're just going to try to just, think a clear shot, and then shoot your shot, and then forget about it and move on. I'm going to spend a little bit of energy. The next event that I'm playing in has a 30-second shot clock, so I'm going to be spending most of my time just trying to make clear decisions as early as I can, and then just try to complete my visualization as efficiently and effectively and simply and clearly as possible, so that it's a short amount of time, so that I can then maximize, my flow with the 30-second shot clock that we're going to be dealing with, so that it doesn't affect me negatively. I know that in the pressure of the match, it might be difficult to make good decisions with that 30-second shot clock. So my main goal is going to be then to just work on making clear decisions more quickly, and then also knowing that it's not going to be the end of the day, the end of my career or whatever. If I feel the time pressure, then I do. It is what it is, and I know that there's extensions and stuff like that, so I feel like it should be good. My main focus is like, well, if you're going to be playing in a tournament with the shot clock, you don't want to be spending a lot of time, playing these long, grueling games where you're playing a lot of safeties and you don't know what to do. I think that for me, my best thing is I'm just going to go for the kill every time. Try to like make that really good, safe, lockdown safe, the easy ones that I see, and and just focus on the important things. When you're making the ball, be like, well, this is my line. I'm going to focus on making that shot, and then where do I want my cue ball to go? And just like play my cue ball to that spot. And then all you have to do to win really is just make that happen, and then you should continue your run. So there's no more to it than that. The thing is like when you start adding all these other complications to it, then now you can lose yourself. So I'm just trying to have a simplified process, that I use, like a framework to make decisions, so that I can make quick decisions that are still going to be solid, fundamentally solid strategy decisions, and that are going to help me continue to play well and not throw myself off just through like either being overly complicated or not like robust enough to survive through a little bit of stress. But like I said earlier, all this is just for the experience too. So you gotta be like, well, this is an experiential thing where like you don't play team events every day, so you got to get used to doing it, and part of that is just experiencing what did I do. So I'm definitely going to pay attention to all the things that happen as much as I can, and reflect on that later, so that I can make decisions about, okay, what did I like about what I did there? What do I want to to work on more to help me be more successful for the next event and make myself a better player at the end of the day. All these experiences ultimately are for our own personal improvement, so we gotta like kind of treat it as such going into it from the beginning. If we go into every tournament, every event, every match that we play where we are trying to improve, as a high value of our system is just improvement in general and growth in general, which I think is pretty fair to have. In order to win, you got to continue to try to get better, so you can find more techniques that allow you to win. So the growth should be high on your list of things that you want to work on while you're trying to learn how to win. So I'm going to focus a lot on that part of it, which is my normal, which is I'm not necessarily trying to play well. What I'm really trying to do is discover techniques that help me play better than I already do in the midst of competition. Because when you're practicing and you're in flow, and your like rhythm is good and all that, it's pretty simple. The question is, can I come with that in a team environment when maybe I haven't been hitting a lot of balls, or maybe my team is down, my team is ahead, and now I'm not feeling the pressure, and or maybe you have the long wait, etc. There's so many things, and it's all about just being like, okay, with the situation here, what's my play, and then just you can make a quick decision, and then you just go with it, and you hope that that's enough to take you there through the reps that you played. So that's pretty much all I have for the team thing. I'm not going to necessarily do any special practicing. I just, I like to hit balls, work on my cue ball control, work on, my stroke, etc. I'll probably spend a little bit of time working on my jumping, especially for this. Other than that, if anybody, has a comment they would like me to talk about, I think pretty much I'm, done with the team event discussion. I'll talk a little bit about the Scotch doubles, which I think is kind of a subcategory and interesting part of the team dynamic. For anyone that doesn't know, it's how Scotch doubles works is that you're going to alternate your shot on your team with your partner's shot. So you'll be, mixed doubles or Scotch doubles is, two different players on one team that are just alternating shots. And one of the interesting things about that is like I'm a 670 Fargo, so maybe another, I might match up with a team, a partner that is like 550 Fargo, etc. So now there's a 100-point Fargo differential. So when we play Scotch doubles together, each shot that I shoot, I'm going to be shooting the result of my teammate's shot and vice versa. So kind of the way the dynamic works to me is like, as the better player, the focus for me is always to try to discover what my partner's best run out system is, as far as like what their skill set is: draw, follow, spin, shot making, defensive play, and then try to maximize their opportunity given the framework of my own abilities. I'm not going to shoot shots that are beyond my own ability just to make it easier for them and then reduce my own percentages. My goal is to increase both of our percentages as best we can through creating a run out pattern in my mind when we play, and leaving my partner shots that are actually doable for their skill level, as typically they're going to be lower rated player than me, and they may not be able to shoot some of the shots that I've maybe found routine, and that's in that skill gap where I'm the better player. Now, if I'm playing with someone that's like approximately the same Fargo as myself, or not too much lower, then I typically will just play the shot that I want to shoot to maximize my own percentages, with the expectation that they are also going to be kind of in that mode where they have enough skill, a balance to be able to accomplish the shots that I'm leaving them, and then vice versa. So then it's going to be more about just like, can I play my own game as effectively as possible, and come up with really nice shots to make the pressure less for my partner, and then in turn, then that will then allow them to play better. Ideally, I can leave them in really nice situations so they can stay comfortable, and then and the same thing, because if you can keep your partner comfortable when you're playing Scotch doubles, you're definitely going to do better than if they're very tense and not necessarily playing up to their potential. In any moment, a tough shot can occur, and then now, we get to find out what's going to happen. If you just, everything is easy, that's really how you want it to be. So you try to set that up as best you can. As far as like playing with a better player as my partner, I would just say that you just play the game as best you can. You don't have to worry about what your partner is going to do. Your partner is supposed to have an overlapping knowledge and skill abilities to your own, so they should be able to mostly accomplish any shot that you can see to a pretty good degree, and also they should be able to see things that you're not aware of and do better things necessarily than you thought necessarily existed. So because of that, I think you just try to play your own highest percentage situations, assuming you have like a relatively balanced game, which I think the higher your Fargo and the better your skill level is, the more balance you're ultimately going to have. You can't get away with being a high level pool player without having all the skills that you need in most situations. You can't just fall on your face all the time and then have a high Fargo. When you encounter certain situations, you need to have tactics that can allow you to overcome a lot of different scenarios. So that's kind of the way I look at it. As far as playing against your opponent in Scotch doubles, that's definitely an interesting thing. If you keep track of which one of your opponents is shooting next, now it's some of the time you can take advantage of their lower rated player by playing a little bit more offensively, I'd say, against their low rated player some of the time, and by taking the better player's opportunities away so that they're just being tougher. Like, I might play more safeties against the better player in scenarios where it makes sense to keep them off the table and keep them playing safe and making moves instead of shooting shots that are going to allow them to break the game open, and then, leaving my opponent when it's their weaker player, some of the tougher shots that my expectation is that they may be able to make the ball, but they're not going to necessarily be able to get shape, and then now they're going to leave their partner with a tougher shot that they may not be able to overcome. But a lot of that kind of gets to the point where it's like you may be overthinking your life a little bit more. If you're going to play like in a longer set or whatever against that same team, then you might spend a little bit more time like that. But I think mostly that is borderline not that effective. I think just kind of playing your own best game is really the highest percentage win rate, is just going in there assuming that you're like top play and that your level of play is high enough to where you're not going to have to necessarily do too much special things. I mean, it should be obvious, in some scenarios, I think, if you're paying attention to how you take advantage of your opponent's weakness, that you should do that. And not, the weaker your opponent is, the more easily exploitable they are. So then, but I think that's pretty obvious when your team is playing well and their team is not playing well, or vice versa. It's pretty easy to see that. And then now, you just have to be like, okay, what's really going on? What needs to happen to change or continue to make the scenario play out the way it is? So beyond that, I have nothing. So I'm just going to hit a few balls and then get back to it.